Carl Jung discovered something that terrified him. When people truly awaken, they lose something they can never get back. And it's not what you think. This loss is so complete, so final, that Jung called it a psychological death. Today, you'll learn what awakened people lose forever, and why Jung believed this irreversible transformation is the only path to becoming whole. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Most people think awakening is about gaining wisdom, finding peace, or discovering your purpose. But Jung spent decades documenting what actually happens during real transformation, and what he found was disturbing. Awakened individuals don't just change their perspective, they lose the ability to see the world the way they used to. They cross a threshold that has no return. The person who goes through the door is not the same person who comes out the other side. And this is where the story gets interesting. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole. But here's what most people miss about this process. It's not about adding something to yourself. It's about losing something fundamental, something that everyone else around you still has, something that makes normal life feel normal. When you lose this thing, the world suddenly becomes a very different place. You see through illusions that once comforted you. You recognize patterns that once kept you safe in ignorance. And there's no going back to not knowing what you now know. This is the first loss that awakened people experience, the loss of the shared dream. The shared dream is the collective illusion that most people live inside without ever questioning it. It's the invisible agreement that says, if you follow these steps, life will work out. If you get the degree, the job, the house, the partner, you'll be fulfilled. If you play by the rules, you'll be rewarded. If you're a good person, good things will happen to you. The shared dream tells you that external success equals internal peace, that validation from others determines your worth, that happiness comes from accumulating the right things, achieving the right status, or being seen in the right way. And when you're living inside this dream, it feels absolutely real. It feels like the only way reality could possibly be structured. But awakened individuals have lost access to this comforting illusion. They see it for what it is, a story that most people tell themselves to avoid facing the deeper questions of existence. A narrative that provides temporary meaning but collapses under honest examination. Once you see through the shared dream, you can't unsee it. You try to care about the things that used to matter. The promotions, the social status, the approval of people who are still asleep. But the caring doesn't come naturally anymore. It feels hollow, performative, exhausting. This is what Jung called the burden of consciousness, the weight of seeing clearly when everyone around you is still operating in the dream. And this burden only grows heavier with time. This leads to the first specific loss that Jung documented in his patients, the loss of the persona, the social mask we wear to be acceptable to others. Everyone has a persona. It's the version of yourself you present to the world to fit in, to get along, to be liked and approved of. Before awakening, you wear this mask without realizing it's a mask. You think the persona is who you really are. You genuinely believe the performance. But awakened people lose the ability to wear the persona seamlessly. They become aware of the gap between their authentic self and the role they're playing. And once you see that gap, you can't fully commit to the performance anymore. Here's what this looks like in real life. You're in a social situation where everyone is engaging in polite small talk, performing enthusiasm about topics nobody actually cares about. Before awakening, you could participate naturally. You'd smile, laugh at the appropriate moments, say the expected things. But after awakening, you feel the artificiality of it all. You see everyone performing their personas, and you can't join in with the same ease. You try to fake connection, but the fakery becomes unbearable. This is why awakened people often withdraw from social situations that used to feel normal. Not because they're antisocial or broken, but because they've lost the capacity to pretend, that surface-level interaction satisfies their need for real connection. Jung observed that this loss creates a profound loneliness. Your heart actually opens wider after awakening. You develop a greater capacity for depth, authenticity, and genuine intimacy. But there are suddenly fewer people who can meet you at that depth. Most people are still comfortable in the shallows, still satisfied with persona-level relating. And when you can no longer join them there, you find yourself alone in a crowded room. This isolation is not chosen. It's the natural consequence of losing your ability to fake connection convincingly. The second loss cuts even deeper. Awakened, people lose scarcity-driven motivation, the old engine that powered their entire life before transformation. Think about how most people operate. They're driven by fear. Fear of not having enough money, not achieving enough status, not being good enough, not being loved enough. This fear creates a powerful motivation to compete, to accumulate, to prove yourself. The scarcity mindset tells you that resources are limited, that you have to fight for your share, that your value depends on winning in a zero-sum game. And this mindset, while exhausting, provides a clear framework for living. It tells you exactly what to do. Climb the ladder, get more, prove yourself, win. But when people awaken, this framework collapses. They gain access to what Jung called transimmanent reality, the awareness of infinite possibilities beyond the structures that scarcity consciousness creates. Suddenly, the old motivations don't work anymore. The fear that used to drive you forward loses its power. You can't make yourself care about climbing a ladder that you now see as arbitrary. You can't force yourself to compete for prizes that feel meaningless. The entire mission that structured your life before awakening just vanishes. And this creates what Jung called a motivational void. People in this state often feel lost, directionless, unmotivated by anything in the external world. They can't go back to the old drives, because those drives depended on believing in the scarcity framework. But they haven't yet discovered what will motivate them from their authentic center. Jung recognized this paralysis as a necessary stage of transformation. He called it psychological death, the death of the ego-driven self that operated from fear and scarcity. This death is terrifying because for a time you feel like you've lost all sense of purpose. You can see through the old game, but you haven't yet found the new one. Jung called this phase the sacred pause, a space between identities where the old self has died, but the new self hasn't yet fully emerged. Many people get stuck here. They lose their old motivation, but never find a new source of drive. They become passive, depressed, disconnected from any sense of mission or meaning. Jung warned that not everyone survives this transition. Some people remain in the void permanently, unable to return to the old drives, but unable to access the authentic motivation that lies on the other side of the death. This is why Jung said individuation is dangerous. It requires you to let everything you thought motivated you die, with only faith that something real will emerge in its place. And that faith isn't always rewarded. The third loss is perhaps the most disorienting. Awakened people lose the capacity to trust external authority the way they used to. Before awakening, most people outsource their intuition to gurus, experts, tests, systems, feeds. They let external sources tell them what to think, who to trust, what to believe, how to live. This outsourcing feels natural because the shared dream teaches you that truth comes from outside yourself, that someone else knows better than you do, that your own perceptions need validation from approved authorities before they can be trusted. But awakened individuals lose the ability to give away their power like this. They develop an unshakable trust in their own perceptions, their own intuition, their own inner knowing. This sounds liberating, and in some ways it is. You can't be gaslit anymore because you trust what you see, feel, and know with absolute certainty. You can't be manipulated by propaganda, marketing, or psychological games because you recognize them immediately. But this comes with a cost. You also lose the comfort of having someone else make decisions for you. You lose the convenience of following a pre-made path. You lose the safety of blending into a group that all believes the same things. You become responsible for your own discernment in a way that can feel overwhelming. Jung connected this to the concept of shadow projection. When you're unconscious, you project your shadow onto others. You see in them the qualities you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. You get angry at them for behaviors you secretly engage in. You make them villains in your psychological drama. But awakened individuals lose the ability to project their shadow unconsciously. They recognize that what irritates them about others is usually a reflection of something in themselves. Once you see this truth clearly, you can't unsee it. You can't recruit others to play roles in your dramas anymore. You can't make someone else the bad guy to avoid looking at your own darkness. This loss of psychological projection means you lose the ability to feel like a victim in the same way. You recognize your role in creating every situation you find yourself in. For many people, this is unbearable. The victim identity, while painful, provides a kind of comfort. It means nothing is your fault. It means you don't have to change. You just need others to stop victimizing you. But awakened people lose access to this narrative. They see their own complicity too clearly. They recognize how they unconsciously recreated painful patterns. They understand that their suffering often served a hidden purpose in their psychology. And once you see this, you can't go back to innocent victimhood. You're responsible now. Fully, completely, terrifyingly responsible for your own experience. These losses compound and intensify each other. When you lose the shared dream, the persona, the old motivations, the comfort of external authority, and the victim narrative all at once, you find yourself in what Jung called a nihilistic purgatory, a space where all meaning has collapsed, but new meaning hasn't yet been constructed. The old world is gone, but the new world isn't clear yet. You're between identities, between worldviews, between versions of yourself. And this space is dangerous because nothing feels real anymore. The things that used to matter feel trivial. The people who used to understand you feel distant. The life you used to live feels like it belonged to someone else. Jung warned that many people try to escape this purgatory by returning to unconsciousness. They try to unsee what they've seen, unknow what they've learned, climb back inside the shared dream. But this never works. You can't regress once you've genuinely awakened. You can only pretend to regress while knowing you're pretending. Some people spend years in this pretense, going through the motions of their old life while feeling utterly disconnected from it. Others break down completely, unable to maintain the performance any longer. Jung observed both outcomes in his practice. But here's what happens if you don't try to go back. If you stay in the void long enough, if you resist the temptation to grasp at old certainties or numb yourself with distractions, something eventually emerges, not from outside yourself, but from the depths of your own psyche. Jung called this the return of authentic energy, the emergence of the true self beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the personas, beneath all the fear-driven motivations. This self has been there all along, but it was buried under layers of social programming and psychological protection. The losses you've experienced didn't destroy you. They burned away everything that was keeping you from yourself. When this authentic self begins to emerge, everything changes again. The motivation that disappeared wasn't actually gone. It was just redirecting from external achievement to inner alignment, from ego goals to self-expression. The directionlessness you felt wasn't emptiness. It was a clearing of space, so your unique contribution could emerge without being forced into predetermined molds. The sacred pause wasn't an end. It was a gestation period. Something was being born inside you, that couldn't develop under the pressure of your old way of living. Jung observed that people who make it through this death and return process develop something remarkable. They maintain consciousness without being crushed by it. They see clearly without becoming cynical. They live authentically without needing everyone else to understand them. They develop what Jung called strict boundaries, the ability to protect their inner reality from the unconsciousness of the world around them. This protection isn't cruelty or coldness. It's clarity about where you end and others begin. It's the wisdom to know who has earned access to your depths and who hasn't. It's the strength to let other people live in the shared dream without trying to wake them up against their will or allowing them to pull you back into sleep. The final gift that emerges from all these losses is the thing Jung spent his life pursuing: wholeness, the integration of all the parts of yourself that you split off to be acceptable, to be loved, to survive. When you lose the persona, you get back your authenticity. When you lose scarcity-driven motivation, you get back purpose that comes from your core. When you lose faith in external authority, you get back sovereignty over your own soul. When you lose the victim identity, you get back your power to create your life consciously. None of these trades feel fair in the moment. The losses hurt more intensely than the gains feel. Good, at least at first, but over time, you realize you didn't lose everything. You only lost what was fake, what was borrowed, what was never really yours to begin with. Jung believed that most people never complete this process. They glimpse the door to individuation, but choose not to walk through it because the cost feels too high. They sense that crossing that threshold will change them irrevocably. And they're right. It will. The you who enters is not the you who emerges. That's not a metaphor. It's a description of an actual psychological death and rebirth. The old identity dies. The person you thought you were ceases to exist, not because you pretend to be different, but because the core of who you are shifts in ways that can't be undone. But for those who do walk through, who endure the losses and the void and the terrifying responsibility of consciousness, something extraordinary happens. They become what Jung called individuated, fully themselves in a way that most people never experience. Not perfect, not enlightened, not free from suffering or struggle, but whole, integrated, real. They've lost the ability to choose ignorance, and that loss, that permanent, irreversible loss of the option to stay asleep, is the beginning of true freedom. The thing awakened people lose that they can never get back is the comfort of unconsciousness, the peace of not knowing, the simplicity of believing the shared dream is real, the ease of following paths that others laid out, the safety of blending in with the sleeping majority. Once you truly wake up, you can't go back to sleep. Not really. Not honestly. You can pretend. You can numb yourself. You can try to forget. But you'll always know you're pretending, and that knowing changes everything forever. Jung said it best in his private journals: the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But this privilege requires paying a price that most people aren't willing to pay. You have to lose everything you think you are to discover what you actually are. You have to let your false self die so your real self can live. You have to walk through the fire of your own transformation without any guarantee that you'll make it to the other side. Most people choose the familiar suffering of staying asleep over the unknown suffering of waking up. And Jung didn't judge them for that choice. He understood that individuation isn't for everyone. The call comes, but not everyone can answer it. But if you're watching this video, there's a good chance the call has already come for you. You've already started losing the things that Jung described. The old motivations don't work anymore. The persona feels suffocating. The shared dream looks hollow. You can't unsee what you've seen, and you can't go back to who you were before. If that's where you are, Jung's message to you is simple. Don't try to reverse it. Don't try to go back. The only way out is through. Let yourself die. Let the old self burn away completely. And trust that what emerges from the ashes will be worth every loss you endured to get there. Have you felt the sacred pause in your own life? That space where all the old motivations died, but the new ones hadn't emerged yet? Drop a comment and share your experience. And if you want to go deeper into Jung's psychology of transformation, make sure you subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.